Hello everybody, Maven here, and unless you're living under a rock, you would know that roaming supers have really shaken up the PvE meta due to the changes they received in Act 2. Sentinel Shield is very popular right now, and I just covered Arc Staff with Raiden Flux, and I'll link that video up above and down below if you want to check it out, and I've been seeing a huge uprise of that build as well. But today we're covering Stormtrance with the Crown of Tempests, another build that's seriously putting in the work. And I just want to say it feels so good to be able to use this exotic again, because it's been dead for years, ever since people figured out Geomag's Fried, and then the Fallen Sunstar came out, which just completely overshadowed the Crown of Tempests in terms of ability spam. But I'm happy to say that Crown of Tempests is back on the menu and finally has its place again. So without further ado, let's break it down. Hope you enjoy. This video is sponsored by Advanced GG, the only clinically proven gaming supplement shown to improve your gaming performance. Use code Maven at checkout for 10% off your order, link down below. Thank you. So if you didn't know about the changes roaming supers got, here's a couple snippets from the TWID. Roaming supers now charge faster than one and done supers. They say that as a reference, if you were to get 3 to 5 Nova Bombs in an activity, you can get 6 to 8 Nova Warps in that same activity. So roaming supers are now even more spammable, which is great. But most importantly, roaming supers also received a 30 to 55% damage buff against champions. And this is an absolute game changer because you would previously never use a roaming super in a Grandmaster Nightfall, and now you actually want to use a roaming super in a Grandmaster Nightfall. Speaking of which, all the gameplay you see in this video was done in Grandmaster Nightfalls. I did Birthplace of the Vile, I did the Corrupted twice, Battlegrounds Behemoth, and even the revamped Inverted Spire, which I would say was pretty fun. It was my first time trying the revamp and it was kinda epic, a little long and tedious and not very farmable, but fun. But anyways, I digress. So the tables turned after 6 years, and finally it's time for roaming supers to have their chance to shine. And now with that said, I just wanted to say that I'm really happy that the game feels fresh again. Does this mean one and done supers are dead? No, because they're still good for burst DPS, and that's what they're supposed to be meant for, so now you can use them for what they're meant for. So now you can use one and done supers for dungeon and raid boss encounters, but roaming supers will shine literally everywhere else, and it's honestly awesome. There have been so many exotic armor pieces gathering dust in the vault that are just based around roaming supers and never got to see the light of day, but now they finally can. And that's a little something I like to call balance, which is what makes a build-oriented game good. Everything needs to have its place instead of having one thing reign supreme, and this is definitely a step in the right direction, so bravo to Bungie on this one. So anyways, about time I read the Crown of Tempests, right? So Arc ability or Jolt Final Blows will increase the recharge rate of your arc abilities by up to 66% at 3 stacks and extend the duration of Stormtrance. So basically, picture a better version of Heart of Inmost Light, but specifically for Arc Warlock, but also benefiting your super as well. So with that said, this one may not shine as much in the DPS department such as Arc Staff or Sentinel Shield, but where it really shines the most is in ad clear, because when you get kills while in your super, it makes it last longer. So it's literally meant to be used for ad clear. And it's a monster at it, the way it chains lightning between targets and lasts a mega long time. But how much damage does it actually do? Well, I just wanted to point you in the direction of an amazing video As the Cross did titled Sentinel is now the best damage super, which is worth your while to go and check it out. In this video, he tests the pre and post damage of all roaming supers against champions, so kudos to him for making that video. And to quote his Stormtrance section of the video, the landfall portion of Stormtrance, which is that burst of lightning beneath you as you cast it, has received a 24.4% damage buff, and the Stormtrance itself received a whopping 42.2% damage buff, which is thick and juicy, just the way I like it. So as I literally just said, this thing is a monster at ad clear. Your super can last like 30 seconds, which is ample time to clear out entire sections and make a billion orbs of power for your teammates, because we're using the power preservation mod on our helmet to massively boost our orb generation. This is a mod that once again never got to see the light of day until this season, or act I should say, because this mod is insane with roaming supers. It allows you to make 20 plus orbs in a single super, especially when paired along with Spark of Amplitude, which makes orbs when we get multi-kills while amplified. This just allows your teammates to spam more supers so you can pick up their orbs, and in turn you can spam more supers. It's a win-win for everybody. Now, a pain point I went over in my Raiden Flux video is that it has no passive ability, but where it lacks neutral game, it makes up for in its super, which is by far more insane than Stormtrance, I'd say. But on the other hand, where Crown of Tempests wins is the fact that it significantly benefits your neutral game in addition to having arguably arguably the best ad clear super in the entire game, just for using your abilities or jolting targets in any way, shape, or form, like a weapon with Volt Shot, for example. It's giving us those stacks of conduction times and massively increasing our ability regen. And when that's paired along with the electrostatic mine aspect that's making ionic traces left and right for ability kills, the ability spam uptime on this build is through the roof, and we're amplified at all times. And the Spark of Ion's fragment making yet another ionic trace when defeating jolted targets is just icing on the cake. So a single kill can make multiple ionic traces and just refine an ungodly amount of ability energy. And remember all those orbs of power we're making with Spark of Amplitude? Well, that's feeding into Absolution on our boots to help all of our ability cooldowns as well, just like the ionic traces. And all these orbs and traces are feeding into our armor charge. And as you know, orbs give armor charge, but traces do too when we use the mod elemental charge on our boots that says that elemental pickups can grant armor charge. This means that we can spam a ton of special ammo finishers which consume 3 armor charges when you finish an enemy to generate a brick of special for you and your teammates. And that means we can really abuse our indebted kindness with Volt Shot, which just feeds into the jolt synergies with this build. Now this here is the optimal roll of lead from gold with Volt Shot, which I would say is 100% worth farming for, but in the meanwhile, if you don't have this roll, then Banshee is currently selling one with loose change in Volt Shot, which should suffice for now until you get it, so I highly recommend picking that up. Now to continue breaking down the rest of the build, our other aspect is Arc Soul, and I say it every time Arc Soul pops up on this channel, but this is seriously one of the strongest abilities in the entire game. It hits like a truck, it becomes sentient when you're amplified, which just means it shoots 6-round bursts instead of 3-round bursts, and you can grant it to your teammates as well when they step into your rift. And seriously, no joke, this is an underrated raid boss DPS strategy. Giving 6 people an Arc Buddy can really rack up the DPS, and since you happen to be on Arc, you can just pop a Geomag, which is never anything to scoff at. But anyways, moving on, the last fragments I didn't mention yet are Spark of Shock, so Arc Grenade can jolt, and most importantly, Spark of Discharge. So our Arc Special Weapon Final Blows create blinding explosions, and furthermore, you might have noticed me using the Flashbang grenades to blind as well. Not only because Flashbangs with Spark of Shock can stun both overloads and unstops, but because all this blinding is feeding into our brand new artifact mod that just came out called Arc Compounding, which says that your Arc sources deal 15% more damage to blind targets. So it's essentially like an Arc version of Weaken. And the fact that Spark of Discharge is making your indebted kindness final blows blind everything nearby means you're often going to be doing 15% more damage with everything you do. Your weapons, your nades, your Arc Buddy, everything. And there's even more incentive to run blinding stuff because we have yet another artifact mod to utilize here called Trace Evidence, which says that rapid precision hits or final blows against targets affected by jolt or blind will generate ionic traces, just further feeding into our ability spam and armor charge. And now let's finally move on to our mod setup. So let's just start it from the top and work our way down. So on the helmet, already mentioned power preservation, which is just absurd with this super. Then we got a heavy ammo finder, literally just because my indebted kindness has lead from gold. But if yours doesn't, then you don't really need this. Then we got a harmonic siphon. Then on our gloves, we got a loader, which is typically a PvP thing. But since Volt Shot relies on reloading, I thought it helped out quite a bit. Then we got focusing strike and bolstering detonation, which both help our rift recharge. And that's important because that's our Arc Buddy. On our chest, we got Arc Reserves and double resist mods. On the boots, I already mentioned elemental charge and absolution, but we also got recuperation to get health back when we get orbs, which is great with amplitude. And finally, on our class item, we got Reaper to make an orb on our next kill after placing a rift, powerful attraction to grab all nearby orbs when we place the rift, and of course, special finisher. For our stats, I opted for max resilience and discipline while maintaining that tier 3 intellect soft capped and dumped the rest into recovery. But strength is not out of the question because it ties into your conduction times ability as well, so if you wanted to invest a bit of strength like I did, that's perfectly fine. For our loadout, this is precisely what I recommend, indebted kindness or even undercurrent in some situations with Volt Shot, then anarchy in the heavy slot since it's good right now with concussive reload and kinetic impacts on the artifact, and finally blast furnace if you're dealing with unstoppable champions, or hung jury if you're dealing with barrier champions. But I can also see a world in which you use the bad juju to charge your super quicker and then just run a Wendigo or bittersweet in your heavy slot. And that about does it for the build. Other things to note is that if you're dealing with unstoppable champions, use flashbang grenades because you can throw nades during your super, and that's the only chance you have at stunning unstops mid-super. But if there are no unstops, then just use pulse grenades because they're stronger and better for overloads. And for the gameplay loop, just use your abilities every chance you possibly get because that fuels your build, and remember to go for a finisher every time you have 3 armor charge, and that's about it. As always, the dim loadout link for this build will be down below in the description and also the pinned comment if you'd like to give it a try. And if you got any buddies who are Warlock mains, I'd appreciate if you share this video with them. This is definitely something they're going to want to see. Every Warlock main needs to see how good Crown of Tempests is now. And that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to hit the like button and maybe even the subscribe button if you're new. Would love to have you here for more content on the way. And let me know what you think about this build in the comments down below. And remember to check out our sponsor, Advanced GG, code Maven at checkout for 10% off your order, link down below. And with that, I will catch you in the next video. See you later.